Remember when we were kids and we wanted to be accepted? If you ever spent even 5 minutes as an outsider, you probably know what it feels like to long to be accepted. And the longing to be accepted is driven by an acute awareness that there are those who gather over here and turn their backs on you. And if you've ever known the feeling that there are those whose backs are turned to you, then you know the feeling of longing to be accepted. But the distinction between childhood and full maturity is recognizing that those whose backs are turned to you are not required to either define you or fulfill your life. If you can sit in the half light of the evening in your own home and realize that those whose backs were ever turned aren't even thinking about you right now. Furthermore, it doesn't matter that they aren't. Then you've finally taken a step out of childhood and into your own. And that's when you're liberated. Because what really binds us and constrains us is the erroneous belief that how they feel about us is going to make a difference in either our happiness or our success. The unfortunate factor that we must weigh at this point is if we've chosen the world of performance, either performance art or performance athleticism, we place value on those outside of ourselves because we believe we're going to need their support in order to thrive. We need those who are willing to spend money to hear what we have to offer. And to that end, that group in childhood whose backs are turned sort of represents in our adult lives those that we need to convince to hear us, convince to become part of our audience. It's a tough call because on the one hand, organizations that are performance-based do depend on and require a certain number, a certain quantity of accepting humans in order to survive financially. So those masses are convinced to support the efforts of performing people by marketing departments, by agencies that put forth the attributes of what is being performed to convince audiences to support them financially. But if even the performing artists and athletes can extract from any need to draw those whose backs are turned toward them for any reason, I would think that that would be the most liberating place to be. Because even if the presentation, the offering, the level of skill, the depth of artistry, the athleticism is worthy of a majority of support, there will always be those who just, for whatever reason, preferences, propensities, genetic predispositions, are just not going to be drawn. So determining the inherent value of what we have to offer should never depend or expect from the group in the corner whose backs are turned. They may or may not turn in our direction, but whether they do or not isn't any criteria for determining our own value or the value of what we have to offer. And in order to fully realize that, we need to take a moment and consider who those individuals might be who are over in the corner with their backs turned. Perhaps they each individually have their own set of problems, such that it is emotionally impossible for them to connect with anybody but those in their own little support group. Because maybe those with their backs turned are their own support group. Maybe they huddle because they draw energy and support from one another and cannot extract from that little cocoon they've created for themselves. Maybe it's therefore emotionally and physically impossible for them to turn and face in any other direction. Hence, their reasons would therefore have nothing whatsoever to do with any quality offering outside of the perimeter they occupy. So when we think back to childhood and the kids that huddle on the playground and ignore, remember that their criteria for accepting anyone into their little group might be in direct opposition to that which we have to offer. Perhaps we would, in fact, be rejected, but on the basis of criteria that have nothing to do with our inherent value. And so we need to be sure never to judge ourselves because of it. Life is not a performance. Success and sustenance do not depend on an audience. Even I, as I sit here speaking into this screen, may or may not be drawing any attention to this offering. Does that stop me from creating it? No. I'm compelled by motives that spring from within me to provide observational, perhaps wisdom, to help encourage those who might be sitting alone, wondering how many are huddled in the corner with their backs turned. Here's a hint. It doesn't matter. I hope you found something in this presentation that helps you see your own value in a new light.